Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Before we start, let's work together to make this an exciting, productive, and respectful meeting. Let's just share our inputs in thoughtful manner so we can create a welcoming environment where all voices are heard. City Clerk, are we ready for the roll call?
Yes, thank you. So, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Malakutian,
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Here.
Councilmember Lee,
Here.
Councilmember Neuenhouse,
Here.
Councilmember Stokes,
Here.
and Councilmember Zahn has not yet joined us this evening.
Great. Hopefully she will join us. Councilmember Lee, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have Women's History Month proclamation that Mayor Robinson will read. After she is done, we will have Dr. Elba Moes come to the table, say their stuff and statement, and then we are going to have a picture.
Be here in person, but thank you for letting me read this tonight. Women's History Month is a time to celebrate the vital contributions women have made to our society and to recognize their achievements in shaping history, culture, and progress across countless fields. And whereas Women's History Month originated as Women's History Week in 1981, when Congress passed a resolution marking its observance beginning March 7th, 1982, and was later expanded to the entire month of March in 1987. And whereas women of every race, ethnicity, and background have played a pivotal role in the development, strength, and resilience of our nation, state, and local communities, often in ways that history has failed to fully acknowledge. And whereas women, including women of color and immigrant women, have long been at the forefront of movements for justice and equity, leading efforts in civil rights, labor rights, suffrage, environmental advocacy, and beyond to create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite decades of progress, women and girls, particularly women of color and immigrant women, continue to face systemic inequities, including disparities in wages, disproportionate caregiving responsibilities, barriers to healthcare access, and ongoing challenges in the workforce. And whereas the city of Bellevue remains committed to equity, access, and opportunity for all, as reflected in its diversity advantage plan and its vision for an inclusive and thriving community. And whereas recognizing and uplifting the contributions of women ensures that their stories, struggles, and triumphs are not forgotten, but rather serve as an inspiration for future generations. Now, therefore, I, Lynn Robinson, Mayor of Bellevue, Washington, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as Women's History Month in Bellevue. And I encourage all Bellevue residents to honor this month throughout programs, ceremonies, and activities that recognize and celebrate the remarkable achievement of women past, present, and future.
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent job. Dr. Elba Moes, please come.
Good evening, and thank you, and gracias, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor, and members of the Bellevue City Council for having me here to accept this wonderful Women's History Month proclamation. It's an honor to be here today. As the daughter of immigrant parents from El Salvador and Haiti, accepting this proclamation is deeply meaningful to me. It honors not only my journey, but also the resilience, leadership, and contributions of all women and those from historically marginalized communities. Women of color, immigrant women, and working class women have long been at the forefront of shaping movements for justice, inclusion, and progress, often without recognition. This proclamation is a reminder that our stories, nuestras historias, matter. Our work is valuable. Our voices, nuestras voces, deserve to be heard. And lastly, I'm excited to be a new member of Bellevue's Communities of Color Coordinating Team, CCC, in which I look forward to engaging in meaningful conversations, building community, and working towards collective solutions that help all of our neighbors in Bellevue thrive. Gracias and thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's go down and take a picture. Thank you so much. I think our first item before we get to our regular agenda is to hear an update from King County Councilmember Reagan Dawn. It is our privilege to have Councilmember Dawn here with us this evening, and we are looking forward to the update. Are they here?
Deputy Mayor, unfortunately, Councilmember Dunn has been delayed, so we just received a message that he's on his way. We're checking on ETA. I'd suggest we just move forward on the agenda and we can circle back when he arrives.
That's awesome. We can go to the approval of the agenda. This evening, we need to make a couple of adjustments to our published agenda. First, we need to remove item 7A from the agenda, and then we need to add an item under council business as item 7B to consider Mr. Alex Zimmerman's appeal of a notice of exclusion order issued by Mayor Robinson on Friday, February 28. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended to remove item 7A and add item 7B?
So moved. So moved. Second.
Second, great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
There is no oppose. Oral communication, City Clerk, are there any speakers sign up to provide oral communications this evening?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There are 5 pre-registered speakers on our list tonight. So before I start calling our list of speakers, I will go over a few of the rules that the council has in place for oral comms. The time period is for no more than 30 minutes, and all topics must relate to City of Bellevue government. People speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and then if time remains, people just speaking to items not on the agenda will be called. The presiding officer this evening, the Deputy Mayor, is authorized in each category to give preference to people who have not spoken to council within the last 60 days or who will be speaking on items coming in front of the council within the next 60 days. Each speaker is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak, and a maximum of 3 speakers are allowed to speak to any one side of a particular topic. And with that, I'll call our first speaker, who is Chuck Doland.
Yes, please sit down. Okay. Anywhere you want, out of those 4 seats.
Council, Mayor, Chuck Doland, longtime resident of Bellevue, 50, 60 years, 70 years. I've been here a long time and have had the opportunity to address you from time to time. Tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit about the LCU, the Luca Middle Housing item. And I personally feel that we are being ramrodded by the state to expand beyond what's reasonable. Lots that are single family that could have 6 or 8 or 11 or 12 housing units on them just do not make sense. I think that that we've done a good job in the city over the many years. I can remember when Bellevue was incorporated in '48, and we've grown considerably since then. I think there are places where higher density residential makes sense. Residences are expensive. Trying to accommodate our growing population is a significant job. I think you as council are to be commended by the work that you have done. but I think that we want to make sure that we don't let the state run over us in their exuberance to provide housing, and our Bellevue Planning Commission and planners need to understand that we need to be reasonable, and so without specific recommendations, or I think I will just leave it at that, and wish you well, and I appreciate the work that you all do. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon.
Okay, the next speaker on the list is Pamela Johnston.
Hello, Pamela Johnston. So ramrod, that's the exact word I used today in the mail about middle housing. However, I've been watching middle housing for quite a number of years here. And what Bellevue is doing is not the middle housing as designated by the middle housing team. I can't remember his name now, Daniel something. But what they're looking at is saying, like, here's a house. And we could take that house and we could make it into 4 units. And that's a fourplex. And we have the same capacity, same earth that we're taking up, the same volume, and yet we have more rooms for people who want a different choice. But what happened at the state, I watched that too, and I protested, and they had some compromises one year, and they told, and all of the people who are for housing said, no, we can do better. We don't need to compromise. Let's shove it through next year. Please, Governor, veto it. And so he did. And then there's like the model code that they came out with. And in the model code, they've got certain things. And it's, you know, using the state stuff. But in there it says, we encourage you to do more. Well, Bellevue has done more. We just had a comprehensive plan where we have done a lot. And this time, we don't want to do more, because I almost think that it's better to go with the bill that's there. We've seen cases of projects in here like take forever and just go into all these like bad vibes, for lack of a better word. And what really disturbs me is that I asked the exact question, was this the direction of council? And they said no. It said encourage it in the model code without coming to council and saying, do you want 9 plexes in your neighborhood? Do you want infinite number of cottages with no parking anywhere? A mile up from where you can't even go, and the bus won't tell you a bus even comes near you. And I myself am not as effective as a lot of other people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Okay, the next speaker is Matthew Burrell.
Hi, Dr. Matthew Rill. 3 months ago, Councilmember Neuenhuis was kind enough to give me an hour of his time to let me whiteboard some ideas on how the city of Bellevue could form a regional digital grand connection. And in that chat, I briefly mentioned 2024 NIH UCFS study it was a national study which shows an exponential increase in the rate of micromobility vehicle injuries since 2017. For example, in 2017, there were 751 e-bike injuries. In 2022, there were over 23,000. So I was thrilled to see a solid MMV written report on the agenda last week. And to expand on that, I sent you all about a dozen questions in your role of governance to ponder this year about MMV safety. Here's 3 of those for tonight. First, how does Bellevue measure helmet usage for MMVs? Because if you do not measure it, you will not improve it. Second, since 2019, the Bellevue Police Department has only written 1 citation in total for the combined helmet usage of MMVs and MMV cycling behavior. Why culturally is that number so low? And third, here's the city's current written legal position about MMVs and helmet laws for permittees. And I'll quote, the city of Bellevue is not responsible for educating users about how to operate a vehicle, local or county helmet laws, or other applicable regulations, unquote. Administratively, preemptively not taking responsibility is an excellent legal position, but in the thick of a known exponential increase of an injury environment for MMVs, and in your position of governance, is not taking responsibility for educating users, even if they're permittees, the right one. Is it consistent with your Vision Zero, where you do take responsibility for educating users? Anyway, MMV safety challenges are beautifully complex. And when it comes to anything complex with an exponential growth, both that little engineer in me and that little physician in me tells you all to be very cautious, because things are going to get worse in this environment. But you should also be very excited, because if you all show the same curiosity that Councilmember Neuenhuis did, then I believe Bellevue has the people to be
Mr.
one of the
Rowe.
first cities in the United States to get a handle on this problem. So
Thank
thank
you,
you all
Dr.
very
Rowe.
much, and good luck this year on that challenge.
The next speaker on our list is Ann Rittenhouse, who is joining us virtually. Ms. Rittenhouse, can you hear me?
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Your time begins now.
All right. Thank you very much. Dear Mayor and Council members, I attended the Middle Housing Code Amendments presentation by staff yesterday afternoon. I was absolutely appalled by the increased density suggestions of the staff, which go above and beyond what is required in House Bill 1110. House Bill 1110 dictates that a mandatory housing element in the comprehensive plans must include an element that ensures the vitality and character of established residential neighborhoods, must provide mandatory provisions for the preservation of housing, must provide for the identification of neighborhoods that may be at risk for displacement from market forces, and provides for the establishment of anti-displacement policies. Nowhere in the staff presentation were these important elements addressed. Most worrisome was the lack of recognition that these proposed blanket changes, which exceed state requirements, will result in the destruction of single-family neighborhoods, not their preservation. Staff inflated density goals, the way that staff inflated the density goals, they will also cause the displacement of families who can no longer afford to live in their communities, because the proposed density increases will result in an increase in property taxes. These increases may well be beyond current resident incomes, forcing them out of their homes. In the current staff proposal, neighborhoods are being treated exactly the same, but as we know, our neighborhoods are not the same. For instance, Newport Hills, where I live, lacks the infrastructure capacity to support the blanket density increases being suggested. We only have 3 roads off our hill, and 2 feed onto Coal Creek. Many times of the day, due to rush hour and school schedules, there can be a 15-minute delay in getting off our hill. That 15 minutes can be the difference between life and death when emergency responders cannot get to a fire or when they cannot get off the hill to transport a patient to the hospital. Staff proposals go far beyond the density expectation and requirements from the state, putting neighborhoods and residents at risk. I urge the council to direct the staff to protect Bellevue residents and neighborhoods by only addressing the minimum densities which are required by the state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Nicole Myers.
And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have the same concern as many of the recent speakers. When I look at what is being proposed in the draft that was only released last week, it looks like we're about to double the impact of House Bill 1110 and House Bill 1337. Those are bills that received significant deliberation. They were in the news all the time. People talked about them so much. And I feel that, you know, not every community member knows about them, but we at least had a chance to find out that that was happening to Bellevue and to expect it. And then to find out last week that all of a sudden there's a new draft about how Bellevue is going to comply with those that roughly doubles the density. In some cases, you'll have a place that the state says should have 4 units that instead is told that it should have 9 units, and then that's not counting the ADUs that it's allowed to have, and the ADUs are allowed to be larger than the ADUs defined by the state, so they're, you know, Bellevue-sized ADUs. The whole thing adds up to a ton of additional density, and that's also not taking into account the way the potential for the co-housing, boarding houses could potentially have a large impact on the neighborhood in a way that we don't necessarily anticipate. And certainly, I don't think the state legislators anticipated that you'd be putting these boarding houses in places that are so far from the frequent transit. You know, in the descriptions of co-housing, it's expected that it would be very accessible by transit. And, you know, if you end up putting it in places where walking distances to get to the bus are longer, it makes it much harder for the transit system to serve those people. I also see that middle housing has been successful in other cities, but a lot of other cities will have 3 units per lot or 4 units per lot as a successful middle housing policy, and we're already going above and beyond that with the 4 and the 6. And I really think we should just go with exactly what the state has mandated, given that there's so little time to inform the community about what's possible and, you know, express, you know, what these different housing forms might look like for them. It's already going to be such a big lift for us to provide all the schools, medical facilities, you know, basic services that the city is going to need, making sure we have the water supply and all the other resources for the big growth that Bellevue is expecting. And I think biting off this much without very much community deliberation is, you know, too aggressive at this time. There will be further opportunities for upzoning, for increasing housing, and for ensuring that we reach our housing goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers.
Thank you. That was the end of our pre-registered list, but we still do have a few minutes of oral communications time. So I'd ask at this point if there's anyone else joining us in council chambers or online who would like to speak to the council. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, Deputy Mayor, I do not see any additional hands, and I believe you've noticed that
Yes.
Councilmember Dunn has joined us, so I'd
Welcome.
suggest.
You are all welcome to sit here and give us the update. We are all looking forward to it.
Thank you very much,
Of course,
Deputy
welcome.
Mayor, for having me. We have a PowerPoint presentation up there. We'll get it up on the screen. Did you get the handouts? Do we hand out the papers?
We have not got a handout.
All right, we're going to get those handouts to you right now. Hey, Jock, good to see you.
Oh, here you are.
You know, Jock and I work together. It's good to see her. I was supposed to, according to my schedule, be here at 7. And I was in at Outback Steakhouse in Eastgate in Bellevue in my district. Like all good electeds should eat in their districts. Somehow you don't get reelected if you don't. And I was just ordered that Victoria filet medium rare. And just as I was taking that first bite of that wonderfully juicy steak, I got a call from my chief of staff saying, no, you're not speaking at 7, you're speaking at 6. So here I am. I appreciate your patience and flexibility. All right. How do I move the screen?
You could have invited us over.
I know, I was thinking about it. Anyway, I'm Reagan Dunn. I'm vice chair of the King County Council. I work for you. I was born and raised in Bellevue. My kids are the 4th generation of my family to have lived here. But I represent 300,000 people all across King County, from everything from south of Interstate 90 to Pierce County, and from Lake Washington up to Snoqualmie Pass, and up to where King County borders Yakima County at Natchez Pass. And it's a great privilege to be here and do the work here. Let's see.
The clicker is just to the left. There you go.
I'm a low-tech man in a high-tech world. Hey, Genesee, how are you? There it is. Okay, so this is what I do. I'm serving as vice chair of the council, and I chair the King County Flood Control District, which we'll talk a little bit more moving forward. And I'm just going to give you my annual update on what's going on and how it intersects with your work, and maybe how we can collaborate to improve the lives of our citizens who live here jointly in Bellevue. Okay, so I represent actually 8 cities. Part of Kent and also part of Issaquah. But the main ones of the population are Bellevue, Newcastle, Renton, Maple Valley, Covington, Black Diamond, and Enumclaw, a whole bunch of unincorporated areas. Hobart, Fairwood, Mirrormont. Some are big. Fairwood's got over 30,000 people. Cumberland, some great places in East King County. And I have not quite 100,000 unincorporated area residents in my district. They don't have a mayor or city council, so I end up doing the local land use work for them. So when there's a dog park that's too loud, and a stop sign is covered by branches, we do all that as well. And we recently had a Sasquatch sighting out in my district, which, as you know, we took care of that right away. So it's all handled. Don't have to worry about it. Here are some major issues that people care about. This is a survey that just came back, a couple thousand responses. So I ask you just to take a look at what people are caring about. Remember, this is just District 9, okay, and the roughly 40,000 people in Bellevue that I represent. They care most about reducing crime, improving public safety, reducing property taxes, and solving homelessness. Those are the big 3 things they're talking about. There's some other important things within, just below that just didn't quite make the top 3. Behavioral health challenges are huge. That would be addiction. Things like protecting the environment are important. There's a lot of other things that go down as you get a little bit farther down, but those are the top 3. Public safety, asked, do you feel more safe or less safe? More safe, 3.5%, less safe, 53.3%. The same, 42.6%. So a little bit more on the less safe. Do you support the executive's plan to close the juvenile jail? Yes, 6.7%, no, 93.3%. So that almost got done. It almost got closed. It was going to be closed next year. And then the exec about this time last year said, we'll kick it back to 2028. And then what happened is they were hemorrhaging all kinds of staff leaving because there was no certainty or predictability. And I finally made a motion and got a unanimous vote to keep it open. It will stay open, and we'll fund that commitment. Do you want to see more or less law enforcement community? More, 69.3, less 1.4. Maintain the same. I haven't seen the crosstabs on Bellevue, but Bellevue's obviously police department is among the best in the country, and so I suspect that those numbers are a little bit more moderate than you would see in some other places in the district. Taxes. This is where the district-wide is, or 300,000 people are on new taxes. Homelessness. And I agree with this first group. 90.4% of the district do not think King County is doing an adequate job addressing homelessness. Okay, we're clearly failing at our responsibilities there, no question. Overwhelming support for removal of homeless encampments, by the way. Next slide. This actually should say top issues of 2024 for District 9. And that needs to, we'll change that, Cody. What we did last year, Harborview Hospital tax. About 4 or 5 years ago, we put together a bond for Harborview. It was substantial. And then they were $970 million off target and over budget. And so the county essentially bailed out Harborview in a significant way. Again, last fall, I voted against this particular tax because I wanted to make a statement about how important it is to make accurate, predictable, reasonable expectation setting when we're raising taxes. But it did pass, and that's what's going to be moving forward. Minimum wage was passed in unincorporated King County, and that is $20.29, but it moves up quite a bit over the next period of a few years. So that is the highest unincorporated area minimum wage in the United States. That is obviously not without controversy. And then another one that PSC was working on is battery energy storage systems. So those are, just like you'd have a substation, except as battery energy plants. And that was controversial, and I had some real concerns with it, but it did pass overall at the county council. And you'll see more of those pop up as the technology comes into play. Talk about some other major issues, and maybe if Deputy Mayor, if Mo, if you're comfortable, you want to take questions at the end, happy to take them at the end. Let's talk about this real quick. Okay, so last year I came here, actually last year Claudia Balducci and I came here together, and what we showed was the chart that didn't include 2024. So what we had was data that showed that in 2023 there were 1,339 overdose deaths alone in King County, or about 4 per day, and that is an exponential increase. But I flagged that it might be coming down, and in fact, it did come down. So that's good. I mean, that is and I want to be fair to the county here. If we're doing something good, we should look at that. I'm not, 100% sure it'll stay down. I hope it stays down. I hope that some of the policies that we're putting in place are making a difference. There was a UW study recently that said that one of the reasons why it's down is that population that is high risk to overdose and die has already died off in some degree, and that is why the number's coming down. I don't know if I buy that, but we don't have enough data. The good news is, look, there's 300 people that are still there that didn't die that did the year before, and that is something we should celebrate. But we still are at crisis levels. And by the way, it claims about 3 times the amount of lives that gun violence claims in our county. Some of the stuff we're working that I hope is having an effect. I led legislation to declare fentanyl a public health crisis. We rolled out the Laced and Lethal program. It just takes one pill to claim a life. Some other public awareness campaigns in a variety of different ways, including an anti-stigmatization effort called Don't Count Us Out. 90% of the public won't seek treatment because they are afraid of the stigma associated with being called an addict or an alcoholic. We've got to change that if we want better outcomes in our community. As somebody who is in recovery from alcohol abuse myself, I used to drink way too much. I can tell you that's a real thing. I would not go to AA meetings for many years because I was afraid of being recognized as an elected official within a treatment recovery environment. And I know there's a lot of people that feel that way. We got to get past that. We got to move past that. And the more that public figures talk about it with candor and with honesty, I think the better we're going to be able to do with that risk population. Okay, there is still a huge gap between our public health infrastructure related to both mental health but also substance use. But we did a big swing that I supported, 5 crisis care centers, and of course, one of them will be right here in East King County. So we got North, East, Central, South, one for youth, and some mobile crisis units as well. That won't fix the entire problem, but it'll take a chunk, maybe a fifth to a quarter of what the need is out there. That's an important start, and we should be proud of that accomplishment. So we'll keep working on that. And I do an annual conference on substance use disorders, and we had up to 700 people at the last conference. So we're taking it head on. There's a lot more we can do with additional resources, infrastructure, and better coordination. But it is a start, and I hope that the data that the numbers are coming down continues, and we'll watch it very closely. Okay, let's turn to another not very pretty subject. And again, you don't want just good news. I don't think you want your elected leaders coming here and just giving you this is all just wonderful and rainbows and unicorns. There's real problems that we have to face as policymakers. This is one of them. That is the number of individuals experiencing chronic homelessness by state. That's the change over the prior year. This isn't my data, this is HUD. This is the federal government data. And you will see that we are by far and away the clear outlier in the largest growth, both per capita and by overall numbers, in the amount of new homeless people. And if you look at that table on the left, more and more, higher percentage every year are now what we call chronically homeless. You know, those are the folks living in the tents and in their cars and you know, not necessarily in the shelter system. So we have the third highest homeless population in the nation after California and New York, who are far, far bigger than we are. We have a lot of work to do. Now, you're all policymakers. You all have your own views on this, but I would argue that our solutions to homelessness are not working, that we've been trying a lot of the same things now for around a decade, and they continue to get worse. And so we need to think really hard as a community about how we might consider abandoning some of the old talking points and the old policies in favor of things that are working in and around the country. And so while housing is important as we reduce homelessness, it is not everything. So housing first, I'm sorry, I just don't think that is the right solution. We've been trying it for a decade. It's not working. It's making things worse, in my opinion. The answer is housing plus a huge investment in drug and alcohol treatment programs. Housing and drug and alcohol treatment programs, and a huge investment in mental health and psychiatric challenges. And why do we know that? Because the one-night count that counted this last, 62% of chronically homeless people self-identify as actively addicted to drugs and alcohol, and 73, and it's more than 60, but 64 is what the number was. It's more like 80, but 64 self-report that. And then 73% self-report a serious mental health challenge. So it's housing, it's drug addiction, it's mental health challenges, and it's a bunch of other things like job training. So the best way, in my view, to handle this is to really put as many tools in the toolbox as we can, and to also have you know, the local homeless shelters. This council made incredibly bold and courageous decisions in doing some of the work in that area, including the men's shelter, and you should be commended for that. Go next slide here. Another area, now this would be an area where we're not doing well because it's exclusively under our jurisdiction. Superior Court backlogs, unlawful detainers were way, 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 way off. Look at the pending monthly average on the bottom. We now have 2,200 cases that aren't getting heard, and you know, if we want to support, you know, basic contractual rights and rent and all of the things that we honor through landlord-tenant relations, we do have to create an avenue for those individuals who simply aren't willing to pay rent, and also then aren't willing to also move out when they are seriously delinquent. And so this is one way, but we did create expedited hearing processes, emergency rules. We added a couple of Superior Court judges just here the other day to add them in, and we're improving the unlawful detainer process, as well as getting additional support from the state legislature. So I hope that that small portion of the backlog improves, and I think ultimately it will. Part of that also, to be fair, is those eviction moratoriums that happened during the pandemic, right? They sunsetted, and so then there's a bunch of folks that are ready for eviction that haven't yet been processed. So there's a little bit of a bow wave we're dealing with. Let's talk criminal justice. There's another slide on courts I'll come back to in a second. Let's look at violent crime in King County. Violent crime was going up, 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 up. A lot of that was a result of sort of that tsunami of the pandemic that created a lot of social unrest, and now it's sort of washing back out, and we're looking at the damage. But what we're seeing with the adult offender population is it is coming back down. While in 2023, the rest of the country was coming back down, it took us about a year later to reduce those trends, which is good. This is a good thing. I just want to make sure we recognize when we're doing something right. And I think part of it is that the sheriff is really working hard to get more deputies, and There's a renewed commitment to making sure we fund our criminal justice agencies and a lot of other things that are happening, and that is a good thing. But it is not true with juvenile crime. Juvenile crime is off the charts in terms of its increase, and you'll see what's happening there. We have a significant amount of challenges, some of them caused by these nonprofit diversion, restorative community pathways, and other programs that aren't yet proven to actually reduce recidivism. There's a huge percentage of folks of young people that aren't showing up to those programs. And obviously the threat to close the juvenile jail, it really hurt morale and staffing levels at those facilities, and all of the court probation counselors were shifted out of the court, 17 of them, and moved into this nonprofit restorative community pathway. So you're going to hear a lot now this year, because there's a county executive race, on the effectiveness of that and whether they're still deploying those as the right thing to do, or are we going to bring it back to the model we had before. But I don't think anyone should be let off the hook, myself included, for policies that lead to this, because this isn't working right. Something wrong is happening here. Back to the King County Superior Court backlog system. That you'll see the pandemic spike. So for many years, the courts operated right around the number of cases. That green line was whether they were in line with processing cases as they came in the door, and they were. And then the pandemic hit, and we shut the courts down, and then we did hybrids for a little while, and remote, and all of these things, and everybody got backlogged. We have come down, and it's to the court's, Superior Court's credit, and District Court, for what they've done on that top slide. They have made a difference, and we've also put resources in. But on things like murders and homicides, we haven't yet caught up. Part of that's because there's been an increase in murders and homicides overall since what happened back in 2020, but part of it is because we haven't yet caught up, and it's not looking all that good on murder or homicide. So we got to continue to make investments in our judiciary to get those systems under control, because those cases, particularly those homicide cases, need to be prosecuted and followed up on. They can't be left hanging. Not like that. It's too important. So that is a system in need of improvement. Okay. I sponsored legislation to keep the Patricia Clark Children and Family Center open. So that's the youth jail. It's got a gymnasium. It's got libraries. It's got workout facilities. It's got special meeting rooms. It's got a lot of good things that the youth can benefit from. Only a third of it is being used right now, but we were able to get a unanimous vote to sort of overrun Dow Constantine's hope to close the jail. And I think you'll see more of the resources and counseling and treatment being used within that facility and not out into the diversion programs. So again, you can see the juvenile felony numbers are very high, and they're going up. Okay. So what happened, let's talk about Sheriff's Office. So there was 114 vacancies, which is a huge number of law enforcement vacancies. Nothing like Seattle, it was over 300. Okay, that sort of defund the police movement beat the heck out of Seattle, and it hurt us. And I'm talking county sheriff's office now. There was a lot of things that actually hurt. There was just a morale problem. The people they could take the retirement, took the retirement. We lost another 40 because of the vaccine mandate. There was no flexibility in allowing a testing option, which I think was unfortunate. So we way down. That affects our contract cities and all the other services we provide as first line of defense for unincorporated and rural areas. But we are down to 75. Metro wants another 10 for transit safety. They're going to probably get them, but we gotta hire them before we can deploy them, right? And so one thing, our previous sheriff, Mitzi, she wouldn't take laterals. She insisted on taking through the process of the Washington State Criminal Justice Academy. Well, we only have 3 spots each class. There's no way we could keep up. And so obviously now Seattle's offering a $50,000 hiring bonus if you want to come be a cop. Now, that's throwing bad money after some bad policies when they scared everybody away. But we have a $15,000 bonus. But we need to get folks back in. We need to let them know that there is a great civic purpose in being law enforcement. And for those of us who want to reform the police system and the police culture and the police institution, I would argue that that is certainly very important. We should continue to reform it. But you can reform the police and also fully fund it at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't do it by defunding, in my opinion. So I think everybody's kind of pointed in the right direction. And Patty Coltindo gets great credit from going from 114 down to 75. We got a lot more room to go on that one. All right. Oh, okay. Just organizational. Our buddy Dave Updegrove is now the State Lands Commissioner. Good job, Dave. We appointed longtime council member Deshaun Quinn to fill the vacancy. He was on the city council down there in South County, and he was, council liaison, and he's done assistant general manager in Metro. He's done a ton of things, so he was an easy pick to put on the council. Legislative calendar. So there's probably going to be 4, and you want to remember this as you think about any revenue options that would go on the ballot from the city of Bellevue. There's 4 potential tax increases coming up from King County alone. APHIS renewal, which is going to be on the April ballot. There's a parks levy where the executive has proposed a 24% increase in that parks levy. So you're going to want to think about what the city thinks about that. We got a supplemental budget. There is an EMS levy that would be on the November ballot, right? So we have a 56% cardiac arrest survival rate in King County. It's the best in the nation. By contract, New York City's is just 6%. Think about that. This is a sad, weird way to say it, but it's the best place in the country to have a heart attack right here. We thank our EMS and firefighters and police for helping with that. But there is also a proposed transportation benefit district that is being considered at a countywide level that would overlay the cities. And I'm told it's roughly 50% for transit operation and transit security, and 50% for roads. You'll need to think about whether you think that's a good idea. Now, you should know that is a sales tax, and it is councilmatic by the King County Council. There's an awful lot of tax increases coming down, and I don't know what the city of Bellevue, knowing you guys, you don't put tax increases on very often out there, so you'll have to think about it. But I do know if that roads improvement district passes, it does not supplant your dollars, but it will tax from your jurisdictions. So remember that. You'll have to decide whether you like it or not. What can I say? Nothing else that's too important there. Let's move on. General fund budget. So my good friend Dow Constantine has went ahead and thrown the budget at him. This is the best part about being like mayor, executive, or whatever. You just kind of write a budget. You send it to the council to have to make all the hard choices. So, but what we're talking about is a $30 million cut to the sheriff's office. A little cut to public defense, a huge cut, $15.5 million for prosecuting attorney, $15.5 million for the court system, an awful lot of cuts, $150 million. That's real money. I've only seen one cut bigger than that, and that was during that 2008, 2009 Great Recession. I think we did $210 million then. This is gonna hurt. Now, granted, there are some reductions that clearly can be made within the county, but this is gonna hurt. We gotta figure out how to reprioritize our spending in a way that is sensitive to the most important responsibilities of governments, quite frankly, is a lot of this stuff up here, keeping the public safe. So there'll be a big battle. It's not going to be pretty. There are going to be lines out the door on our various town halls, and we'll have many on the subject. But we'll see also if the legislature gives us additional tools as well. Next slide. I want you to see the spending pattern for the county. These are spending over the years per biennium. And I think the important thing to think about is the 2008 to 2009 Great Recession. I think we did $210 million then. This is gonna hurt. Now, granted, there are some reductions that clearly can be made within the county, but this is gonna hurt. The important point to note is that 13.72 billion expenditure was a biennial expenditure, okay? 2023, 2024. The 2025 proposal, 1 year, is 10.2. So if you make that match, that'd be 13.72 million to 20.4 billion for the next biennium. And that is explained by a significant amount of spending that is occurring in a bunch of different areas. So there's a lot of spending going on. And just to break it down, if you go back through a 10-year period, there's been a 17% roughly increase in population over a decade, a little more, and a 44% increase in spending. So that the county's been spending a lot of money, just so you know. Okay, well, here we are. Let's talk about some wonderful things. My great friend Lynn Robinson did some wonderful work in helping to save Coal Creek. And my good friend Claudia Balducci, we partnered with the city, obtained that $9.25 million grant for conservation futures to conserve that historic Milton Swanson property. You guys know if you go kind of over Lakemont, you're dropping down basically past where you go up the hill to the summit, back down there right before you take that hard turn up to Newcastle Golf Course. Right there is where the city line is. This is what's being preserved. It's a beautiful piece of property. You got some great parks there. And so I'm just really proud of this city of Bellevue for having the courageous steps and actions to make that happen. I think that's wonderful. And all of you who are bogged down in all that traffic in Factoria, I want to apologize. That was us. We got the resources and made significant contributions to the flood control district, but it saves it. There was some really bad flooding out there in Factoria Boulevard. So that's largely done. We're happy to support that. We've come back with some additional funding to make that happen. And by the way, there's Conrad there. You see Conrad in the red right there. He was there. Jared's there. It was a lot of fun. That was back in the mask days when we did that. So next slide. Okay. I want to talk to you about the grants that have been coming to Bellevue. And this list is a lot of money. I want you to know this is the largest amount of money of any of the 8 cities that I represent in a major way. And it's a testament to all of you for your partnership on these, but it's also a testament to the way in which you guys create shovel-ready projects that we can implement. So South Bellevue Community Center, Emerald Parents Association, Track and Field, various Life Spring, Police Foundation, Kids Quest yet again, Factoria Lunar New Year, Emerald Parents Association, great event there. I know Lynn was there and Jared was there and a few others as well. Newport High School, Eastside Heritage Foundation, and then obviously the Flood Control District, which I chair, a big chunk of money for Upper Kelsey Creek Phase 2, Lower Coal Creek, and it follows up on some major investments from the 4. And then that picture we had just a second ago, that Factoria drainage. For those of you who didn't see how bad it flooded down there, kind of by the Mod Pizza, there's where the old 7-Eleven is, and that whole area was underwater for a while. And as you know, Factoria Boulevard is too important to let get blocked by flooding. Here's more community investments. These are big numbers. Doors Open, Open Doors Capital Grants. So this is for culture stuff. Big money. Theater 33, American Asian Performing Arts, Bellevue Chamber, Bellevue College Foundation, Youth Choir, Youth Symphony Orchestra, Youth Theater, a variety of cultural things that are important, ballet, fine arts. Kids Quest, again, we made a big contribution to them. Dance Theater, Theater 33 again. And so, I did support that addition to For Culture, which is, when we took it to a vote of the people, it only got 36% in my district. But I supported it because I know how important these investments are, I think, in our community, and I think they will continue to pay dividends in the long run. It's one of the things that makes Seattle and Bellevue really special, to have these strong, robust arts communities. And as Bellevue becomes a more international city over the years, I think these investments are worth it and will end up bringing in more business moving forward. A lot of grant opportunities that we have out there. My job working for you at the county is to try and make sure that the money, is spent here in a way that helps dovetail and reinforce City of Bellevue priorities. And so there's a lot of good stuff in there, I think, that we can use. So as your city has both capital and operating needs, as the nonprofits and other organizations that do good work for you have needs, please don't forget to call me or Cody, and we will do everything we can to try and make that work. Oh, there's your rating of your elected officials. We're going to skip that. You don't need to see that. But I did give you a handout that you have up there. You can look at that more closely. County faces challenges. The city faces challenges. One of them is we have an enormous amount of uncertainty with respect to what's happening in Washington, D.C. And, I think when the smoke clears, the changes maybe won't be quite as profound or scary as maybe is being promoted in the media. But the timing of money coming out, what will get cut, what might be added to, we need to watch that very carefully so we aren't left high and dry on some very important federal dollars that we were counting on. So I just want to make the pitch for us as two very important units of government here in King County to continue, I think, a healthy collaboration and do what we can to help our constituency. That's why we were hired to do our job. So that's my presentation, and Deputy Mayor, I'll be happy to entertain any questions if you have them.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for a great update. I am going to explain that graph that you don't show, shows that your satisfaction rating, almost 70%, you get 5 and 4. That 5 is the best and 4 is almost the best. So great job on that. I have one question myself, and then I wanted to have my colleagues, starting with Mayor, asking questions. My first question is that true that 2025 marks your 20 years of being on the King County Council?
19 years, 19. So
congrats
19.
For almost 20. That's an achievement, and thank you for everything you do. And also you showed the support of the King County for the Cold Creek National Park. That's an amazing investment. We appreciate all of your effort. That's me. Mayor, we start with you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It's good to see you. Councilmember Dunn, I just want to thank you for the community investments that you have sponsored, and your communication with our city and your constant contact is very much appreciated. 3 things I'd like to comment on. One, we've seen, even though regular gun violence has in general decreased in 2024, there's actually been a 45% increase in gun violence affecting children and teenagers. And so I hope that the county is looking at that specifically and looking to address that. I'm very concerned about that potential 15.5 million cut to the prosecutor's office that you highlighted there. Our police work so hard to catch these criminals, and some very violent. Even though they're shoplifting, they can be very violent, and we just experienced that in the last month. And fortunately, our police, after weeks of stakeout, caught the 2 and found out that they had actually killed somebody in Renton. So very dangerous. And it just scares me to think that we might lose, I think 15.5 million equates to 90 deputy prosecutors. So I'd hate to lose that. So, and I'm sure you do too. And then the third one would just be asking staff to give us some review and some insight on this potential councilmanic transportation improvement district that's being discussed.
Yeah, we'll
So-
send you over what we have on that. 24% increase is what it's planned right now, from roughly 19 cents to roughly 24 cents. On the park side, the TBD is roughly 50-50. Councilmatic, it is being worked on by Sarah Perry and Rod Dembowski, but it would be Claudia Balducci's committee that would look at it. So we don't quite have the details on that, but there'll be enough public process to kick it around. As you know, when you take a councilmatic vote to raise taxes, as opposed to sending it to a vote of the people, it's much more personal. It's on you, and we got to really think through. I can't vote for all these tax increases. I just can't. We need to be measured in terms of our priorities. But some of this stuff might be good. Some of this stuff can wait for another year. We need to be thinking about how to trim the fat and cut the waste as a necessary predicate to doing that. But Mayor Robinson, we will continue to reach out to you and give you up-to-date information. The gun violence problem is huge, particularly among our youth. I co-authored and ran President Bush's national effort to fight gun violence program called Project Safe Neighborhoods. And it was the only time in the last 30 years that we have made a meaningful reduction in gun-related crime across the United States. And what we need to do is really focus on some emphasis work, some specialized units that focus on it. I think we should be focusing on youth in this area. And in my opinion, we got to hold some of these young people accountable for the crimes they're committing. And for example, restorative community pathways, 40% of the people sentenced to that don't even bother showing up. And some of these folks are pretty serious crimes that are allowed in there. That's $16 million right there, Lynn. We could fully fund the prosecutor's office if we got rid of that program. So you're going to see a robust and probably pretty aggressively fight in terms of how we restore some of this funding, because really the most basic responsibility of government at the local level is keeping the public safe. State level education, at the national level, I would argue, national defense, national security. We got to take care of the basics before we get too far out of line and some of these other priorities. So Lynn, we'll continue to work with you, and we appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing your priorities on that.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Lee, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, Mr. Reagan Dunn, you have demonstrated your long-term value as a resident of the east side of Bellevue specifically, with your mother, Jennifer Dunn, who served the community amazingly well. And I believe she's the first representative serving the east side. And you have shown your ability to be transparent and also to be accountable and to be responsive. You have mentioned all these projects you're working on. Not every one is your favorite project. Not every one you support, but you're willing, as a team member, you're willing to work on it, give your input, provide the best you have, and give your perspective. And hopefully, under this conversation, which is what democracy is about. We have to be working together under bipartisanship, getting people together to see what the public, what the resident, what the citizens we represent, need, and then we represent them. So I think it's very admirable that you are willing to express that in your sense of responsibility, especially in terms of the financial reality. We all know that there's limited resources, and it's a valued resource that we have to be able to manage properly. And I think you've done it very well. At the same time, realizing what is important to people, right? Whatever it happens. The best thing we can do is how do we make it work for everybody? And this is what this country is about. So it's not easy. You are in the city, on the county council. It's a bipartisan body, and you have to be able to work well with everyone. And you mentioned a lot of colleagues you work with. You mentioned about King County executive you work with. You take on responsibilities. One of the examples is you work on the waste water treatment, the WQTD. It's a regional water committee, quality committee. And that's a very challenging task because we're working under a system of infrastructure that's old, that's outdated, that doesn't keep up with growth, but it has impact on everything we're talking about. Impact on infrastructure, impact on climate change, impact on how do we live, how do we have clean water, how do we keep our lake clean, how do we keep our environment sustainable. And you've chaired that committee for a number of years, and it's a bipartisan body. And our current chair, Claudia Baducci, she happened to be also a Bellevue council member and former mayor. She's doing a wonderful job. We share the same interests. How do we serve the community that we're sustainable, right? We don't get to a point where we cannot afford to live in this place anymore in the way that is, important for us to live. So I think this is looking into the future. So I'm very impressed. People understand that. You're helping all the community people that you represent. So, there's so much of it. I think you well deserve it, and we hope that we can work together like you have been. You're reaching out to us. I hope that we can reach out to you, and we can support you. And the good, I always say that the best is yet to come, as long as we're willing to work together, as you have done for the force, for the region, for the county. And so I just want to give one vignette. I was coaching Little League baseball, and I think Reagan and his brother were one of my Little League players. So I'm very, very, very happy that I have this honor and opportunity.
Were they any good?
Well, he's good enough to be coached by me.
Okay, good, good.
A recognized talent.
We
when
went
he's
to the
still-
city championships, and
There
we
we go.
lost. You'll love this. Bottom of the ninth. It was tied score. We had them on the ropes. We're going to win the city championship. And they had a runner on third.
Oh.
And all we needed to do was throw them out, squeeze bunt up the third base line, and they scored. And we forever finished second, which is maybe the best I've ever finished in my entire life. But that was pretty good. Councilmember Lee, thanks for your kind words. Look, here's what we know.
Thank you.
Bellevue is one of the best run cities in the state. It just is. And you guys are thoughtful and deliberate, and you work well together. Doesn't mean you always get along. I know people have their concerns, and they share them, and sometimes it's very passionate. But you're very well organized. Your act together, your lobbying group, your intergovernmental people are all leading the city very well. You've always had really good city managers, a long line of really good city managers. And so we want to continue to work. Claudia Balducci and I, despite being sort of coming from different political philosophies, work together on stuff all the time because we want to make sure the city has what it needs to do its job. And then the other thing is, look, my role as an elected official on the county council is not to substitute my judgment for Bellevue. I want to follow what the Bellevue City Council wants to do and try and help enable you to achieve success there. It would be extraordinarily rare for me to decide that I wanted to do something differently, and we'd certainly have long dialogue. So it's easy to work with this. I've had mayors throw gavels across the room and other council members in some of my other cities. I've had city councils where the minority and the majority wouldn't meet to a point where they actually just couldn't get any business done for a couple years in a city. Like, we forget we should show gratitude when things are working. And so right now things are working. We've got great tough choices moving forward, but I think they're working. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Stokes, you go, please, and then after you, Councilmember Zahn follow you. Please.
Okay, yes, good to see you. It's been a while, and one thing I really appreciate you and always have is that your depth and your interest an action across the board. I think it's hard to look at this and say, well, you know, Reagan likes this part, but he doesn't like to work with this part. You have, the depth is very important. And people in your position, particularly in a very complex thing like the county, just sometimes don't do that. And I think that's something great. And you do a good job in it, and that's also a good thing. One question, and there's a lot of others coming on this, but on the King County budget going forward, what's the prediction for or plans to do this going forward? Because it's interesting with the only 1 year with a significantly amount per year than what has been in the past. Is there going to be some change in that, or is that
Yeah,
just
great question. So what happened was a few years ago, the county charter was changed. And so we did this thing where we wanted to align the executive race and the 5 members of the council to even year elections to align with the presidential race. And I wasn't a real big fan of that because I think local government should not have to share the spotlight with the president, the U.S. Senate, and the governor's race. But that was moved over and it passed. And so what happened was, in order to make that work, to shift from a odd year election then to an even year election, is the charter was changed, and there are these little 3-year terms that are buffer zones. So for example, Claudia, Balducci, and Girmay Zahalai and the other even year districts got a 3-year term starting 2 years ago. And then this year, those of us who will be elected, including the exec, will also have a 3-year term. And then it will be pivoted to presidential election years, and then the remaining 4 councils will be the midterms. I'm not sure it makes that big of a difference, but that is what's happening. So what you have is biennial budget, biennial budget, biennial budget.
Yeah.
And then this year we did a 1-year budget to shift it to make it in line with the charter. And then we'll start our biennial budgets again. So those are the reason for the change, which is a little bit disruptive, but we'll get through it. So I get to say 3 more years and not 4 more years in this one.
That's good. Well, I do appreciate the upgrade in that you've done. I know it's not what we need overall, and it's going to be hard to get to it, but you do, I think, an excellent job of trying to get us there. And again, you know what you mentioned about you and Claudia and philosophies. My perception is that you have a philosophy that's not put in pigeonholes, and and that's why you work so well with people up in across the board and work with us in the cities and everything else. I really appreciate that. That you're not just working for the county; you're working for all the people in the county. And that is really great, and appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilmember Stoke. Councilmember Zahn, if you have any question for Councilmember Don.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate, Councilmember Dunn, all of the data that you were showing, all of the slides to really help us understand what's going on in King County, and then also the investments that have been made by the county. You know, what I've seen is that you do a lot for Bellevue. King County really makes sure that we're taking care of you and Councilmember Balducci both. And then really seeing that we do have to focus and prioritize as we work on our continued partnership and collaboration. And what it really made me think about is the fact that just like at the federal level, the state, the county, and the city, we all have revenue and expense and budget challenges. So as you said, hopefully we can be optimistic that as the federal level settles down, that we don't see the kind of cuts that we're going to have to find a way to scaffold, either at the county or the city level. And then I do want to say that appreciate hearing about the transportation levy potential, because I think you are probably aware that Bellevue's been talking about a transportation benefit district or some other ways to look at increasing our transportation investments quicker. And so understanding how those work together will be important. And then I do also want to say that having been on the Regional Transit Committee, just appreciate the county really leaning in on transit safety and making sure that, you know, we're going to keep our transportation system working better if we continue to help our transit be safer for increased ridership. So just wanted to lift that up and appreciate the council's efforts in that area.
Thank you, Councilmember and Representative. We were excited to elevate you to your new post as well, and I'm glad to see you're finishing off a few priorities as well. You're going to do a great job helping to represent Bellevue both in your new capacity down there. So thank you. The council did vote out today unanimously the new Transit Safety Task Force after some of the tragic homicides that happened in and around the buses. And I think there's a renewed commitment to really trying to make sure the transit system is as safe as possible. You know, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but 3 years ago, King County Metro was the outstanding transit agency in North America, and we're still that good. If you ask the residents, we poll this stuff. What's the best county agency? It's always Metro. That and the library system, but that's actually not King County. It's its own board of library directors, so it's a unit of special government. But we're going to try and make sure that those buses are as safe as possible. And I've never seen more commitment moving forward to try and do that. And I don't ride the buses at 2 a.m., but I know the drivers who do have a lot of horror stories, and we gotta take care of them. If the bus driver's not feeling safe, why in the world will the passengers feel safe? So I hope we have progress on that. And thank you, Council Member.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zahn. Councilmember Neuenhuis.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thanks for being here tonight. Really appreciate the update and everything you do for Bellevue residents in your district, and all the great grants that you've helped funnel in our direction, especially the For Culture. Being a big supporter of the arts and performing arts, et cetera, you really helped accelerate some programs and the longevity of some of these great organizations that mean a lot to Bellevue residents. So that really is impactful. Just really appreciate your approach too, by not straying away from some of the ugly data, some of the ugly numbers here and the ugly stories coming out of King. I mean, how do you address it unless you're really looking at for what it is, right? Although we don't have all the answers yet, I really appreciate your clear work to help address them. Like the mayor, I share concerns about the cuts to public safety, especially law enforcement and the prosecutor's office, and given our relationship with King County, and as the example the mayor provided, that's greatly concerning moving forward. And per your survey, and I'm sure that survey probably holds up across the county, where public safety is number one. So I understand that cuts need to be made to make up for that 150 million shortfall. However, taking them out of public safety would seem to be the last option right now to be looking at, unless you can make it up some other way, or a creative way to approach this. But very, very concerning going forward, and glad you're there to fight the good fight for us to hopefully maintain a level that works for all the cities in King County in general. Alarming too, the juvenile crime rates that have just been skyrocketing. I was just curious, has there been any data to show what has been the genesis of that in terms of that? I heard I believe it was on King 5, a data point that said on average it takes a juvenile to be arrested 5 times before they actually might see some jail time. Again, that was King 5, and I'm assuming they did their research, and that's an accurate data point. But are we seeing that type of across the board leniency that is perhaps leaning towards almost an approach by some of these juveniles where they don't think there are any consequences to their behavior? Just curious if you think that might be part of the issue here, or maybe it's something else that we're not aware of.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think first of all, this sort of defund, disarm, disparage the police.
Yeah.
Sort of played into this. We lost a lot of officers, over 400 when you add Seattle and King County together, and there was a real challenge as they were just trying to survive. And I think a lot of law enforcement just said, hey, look, I'm not going to take risk if I'm going to be personally liable. I can't pursue.
Right.
A lot of real challenges. I think that was part of it. But I think that this moving into a decriminalization mode, starting with the juveniles, has really been counterproductive, okay? when you create a program like Restorative Community Pathways, where you essentially send these, they don't get prosecuted, they don't even have to go before a judge, they go out to a nonprofit group.
Right.
And, they sit in a room and pass the talking stick and try and work it out. I'm sure there are cases where they're successful, but 40% of those folks aren't showing up. And we aren't getting, and we're starting to get a lot of recidivism coming through the programs. I just think young people, obviously they should be treated differently because they're young and they have bad judgment. They're going to make mistakes, but there's a number of those crimes which are violent crime. I think you have to show them guardrails and provide accountability, particularly for repeat offenders. If you don't show up, you need to be held accountable. You're supposed to be referred immediately back to prosecution. We've got evidence of cases where for a year nobody was contacted who didn't show up. Because it's an experimental program, and you can't take $16 million and say, let's just do this pilot program without measurement and accountability. So I think there is a belief that there really aren't the kinds of accountability for young people that there once was.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and having been a federal prosecutor that worked on organized crime are grabbing those juveniles because there aren't any consequences. So they're doing a lot of the work, and a lot of this is more organized retail theft. You saw it here in Bellevue during that riot. There's just a lot of room for improvement. And so, look, I'm not saying you scrap all the community programs,
No,
but
of course not.
they must be heavily monitored. There must be outcome-based, not outputs. How many kids went and passed the talking stick, but outcomes. How many of those young people are reoffending over a period of years? And if it's not working, maybe we got to go back to, I wasn't exactly an angel child, and I remember having speeding around here, and there was one cop at Bellevue who just was brutal, and so I'm not going to say his name, but he used to say he'd ticket his own. What? Well, you might think I won't say it. We used to joke. Because back then you knew all the cops. We would ticket his own mother. Well, sometimes it's good to face a consequence. So, look, clearly the system isn't working right now. We got to get it back in place. We can't make it some advantageous for organized crime to take advantage of it. And then sometimes the best thing you do for a young person is hold them accountable.
That's right.
Because they can make improvements. So, yeah, we really need to rethink the juvenile thing. But the worst thing we could have done is close the juvenile jail.
Yeah.
Because what was being proposed, just to be clear, were unsecured respite houses all throughout King County, including Bellevue, for even young people charged with rape or murder. They were going to put them in unsecured respite houses. Like, that is not realistic, nor is it safe, which is why the youth jail needs to stay open.
Yeah.
So you'll have a long conversation about that. We will as a county moving forward.
And I really appreciate your work too on the court backlog issue with the unlawful detainers, and I hope that the addition of those 2 Superior Court judges helps with that backlog. Look forward to some updates on that as we move forward, but certainly need to help. Anything we can do to help clear that up would be great as well. It not only affects Bellevue but the entire county as well. But again, appreciate the update and everything you do for Bellevue residents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Newhouse. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Dunn. Appreciate you being here. Really appreciate all the efforts on behalf of the city of Bellevue. And too, I just appreciate all the engagement that I've had with you and that really you've instigated. And it's been numerous times being asked out for coffee and just having a lot of interaction. And I really do appreciate that. I think my colleagues have done a really good job of kind of laying out all of the great things that you've done on behalf of the county and of the city. Certainly agree with all those comments and appreciate all of that. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you go about it. And I've had some experience with you in that, and specifically as it relates to the Save Coal Creek effort. And I was involved in that early on. And early on, you were very involved in that, and your staff was very involved. And we had a lot of access to the staff, and they were clearly very interested in moving this forward. They were regularly updating us on your view of it and the work that you were doing. And, just from the very beginning, they were all engaged, you were engaged, you moved this forward, And then we get to the kind of the finish line, and the county comes across with, more than half of what we had to pay for that. And it was just really outstanding. It's a tremendous investment in the county that's just going to pay off for years to come. And I really like the way you go about your business, and it's just an example to the rest of us and to me personally, and just really appreciate you being here tonight and all the other times as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun to get engaged. Like many of you brought in by a community group early on, toured the facility, know it well, grew up there, hung out there. It's nice when you can partner with somebody on the other side of the aisle to try and get something done. So Claudia and I worked really hard, and Lynn was fabulous in her cooperation in the city's partnership. So these days, you want to get a major acquisition like that, you got to do a multi-jurisdictional effort. And so it was a big victory and something we should all be proud of. And years from now, that's going to be a wonderful, there may be development around it in significant ways, but that will be preserved a long time. And I grew up on Coal Creek. I grew up in the mean streets of Newport Shores and South Bellevue. Man, I fought my way out of that tough inner city community. So anyway, I used to sandbag the flooding. This is before we had the drainage ponds and all of the various levee work that was up in the Summit, Coal Creek, Newcastle. I grew up protecting that creek, and it got worse and worse until we started to put in, and the city of Bellevue sued us. This is like 40 years ago. But we did some good work down there, and so there was a chance to preserve the same little creek that I grew up on, and it's kind of fun to be able to do that. So anyway, but we'll continue to partner all together to try and make sure that Bellevue's interests are served. And I do want to say to the council, you got a really good staff. There's some A-listers over here that I've worked with over the years that are fantastic, and I'm glad you have them on board. We'll continue to work together. I'm grateful
Thank
for the
you
chance
so
to be
much,
here.
Councilmember Dunn. Hopefully you and Cody get some steak after this. Is there a plan to go back or?
Oh, my steak is in the car.
In the car,
And
okay.
it sounds really good right now.
Okay.
So
Appreciate you here. Thank you so much, and I appreciate all of the work you do for our city and at the King County level. Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's just move to the next item. Tonight, under council business, we have added an item to consider an appeal of the notice of exclusion that Mayor Robinson issued on Friday, February 28, pertaining to Mr. Alex Zimmerman. The exclusion is from attendance at Bellevue City Council meeting for 60 days. The presiding officer, in accordance with the council rules, has the authority to issue a notice of exclusion to any individual who repeatedly disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meetings. Mr. Zimmerman, as a result of repeated violations, was previously excluded from participating in public comment at City Council meetings from October 14, 2024 through November 13, 2024. After the exclusion period, Mr. Zimmerman continued to violate the rules of decorum and disrupted, disturbed, or otherwise impeded the orderly conduct of meetings on no less than 6 occasions. Mr. Zimmerman was warned by the mayor that his behavior violated the rules of decorum at each of the 6 meetings and or was ejected and or was escorted out of the meeting. The mayor found that Mr. Zimmerman's violations of the rules of decorum and refusal to correct his conduct after being warned caused actual disruptions and disturbance and impeded the orderly conduct of the meetings, which therefore was the basis for the mayor's issuance of the notice of exclusion from attendance at city council meetings for 60 days. At this point, I will turn it over our city attorney, who will guide the council on next steps for considering the appeal filed by Mr. Zimmerman. Mrs. Thomas, please proceed.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor Malakutian. Good evening, council members. So just wanted to provide a bit more information for you as you're going to be considering Mr. Zimmerman's appeal. Under council rules, any person excluded from participation in future meetings or future public comment may appeal that exclusion to council by submitting a written appeal. The written appeal must be timely and must state the reason for the appeal. As the Deputy Mayor stated, Mr. Zimmerman has submitted a timely written appeal, and per council rules, council has to consider this appeal at tonight's meeting, and to do so by reviewing both the notice of exclusion as well as Mr. Zimmerman's written appeal. Council should not solicit any testimony. After review, council will need to make a decision whether to deny the appeal or grant the appeal. Denying the appeal means that denying Mr. Zimmerman's appeal means that the mayor issued the exclusion order properly and in accordance with council rules. Granting Mr. Zimmerman's appeal means that the mayor did not properly issue the exclusion order. Because council will be reviewing and deciding if the mayor acted properly and consistent with council rules, I just want to provide you a little bit more about what the council rules say. The presiding officer, the mayor, can issue notice of exclusion to any individual who repeatedly disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meetings. The mayor is able to do this only when considering these factors: the seriousness and number of disruptions or violations, their impact on the orderly conduct of the meetings, whether the conduct threatens public safety, and the person's record of conduct at meetings. So again, council should consider both these rules and the notice of exclusion as well as Mr. Zimmerman's appeal, and make a decision as to whether or not the mayor properly issued that notice. With that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. Any question for Mr. Tanis? Online question, Mayor or Councilmember Zahn? Great. Can I have a motion, please, if you are ready?
I move to deny the appeal of the notice of exclusion issued to Alex Zimmerman on February 28th, 2025.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
There is no oppose, I haven't heard, so that's on that topic. Consent calendar, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any oppose? Great. 7:34, we will have 7.5 minutes break, and we will come back for the 2 study sessions. Deputy City Manager Atkins, would you please introduce our first study session?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malakutian. It would be my pleasure. In the fall of last year, the city took ownership of a new park from Sound Transit at the corner of 112th and Main Street. The park was built during light rail construction. Now we're looking to incorporate this park into Bellevue's beautiful system of parks and recreational spaces by asking council to initiate the naming process. With that, I will hand it over to Cameron Parker, Assistant Director, and Susan Ulip, our Capital Project Coordinator, both from the Parks and Community Services Department. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. Today we will be sharing information about the new city park located at the corner of Main Street and 112th Avenue Southeast, and we will also be seeking council's direction to initiate a naming process consistent with the council's policy for naming park and recreation facilities. Our agenda today includes the following. First, we will talk about the project background. We'll go through the park naming process, or park naming policy. We'll review the park naming process. And lastly, we'll discuss the next steps. Here's a little short overview about the park's background. Land was acquired by Sound Transit for the two-line South Tunnel Portal. Park was designed collaboratively between Sound Transit and the City of Bellevue as part of the Sound Transit's Park Mitigation Plan. Park was constructed by Sound Transit, and in late 2024, Sound Transit transferred ownership of the park to the city. Located at the corner of Main Street and 112th Avenue Southeast, near the southeast edge of downtown, is this 1.75 acre park built directly on top of the Sound Transit's South Tunnel Portal. While the park has been open for some time, it was recently transferred to Bellevue Parks and Community Services to operate and maintain. The park provides a lovely space to walk, rest, and enjoy nature. Walking paths provide connections from Main Street to 112th Avenue Southeast, connecting the Sound Transit East Main Station to the surrounding neighborhoods. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to Cameron Parker.
Thank you, Susan. So as Susan mentioned, the park space is a really beautiful space to walk through. And as we incorporate it into our park system, there are opportunities in the now and in the near future to add some defining character to the space so that we really transform it into a place that not only you enjoy walking through, but walk to. We know that the park will be a hub of activity. It is part of, along Main Street there, part of our lake-to-lake trail system. There is the two-line station just to the south. In the future, there may be a rapid ride stop in the immediate vicinity of the park, as well as hopefully future connections east across Main Street to the East Rail Regional Trail. So we'll have a lot of people coming and going around this park space. The park's location on Main Street in particular also presents an opportunity for us to interpret Bellevue history. Specifically, staff are exploring a partnership with a local group for a community-led permanent installation that will commemorate and interpret the history of the Japanese American community in Bellevue. And finally, one of the most indelible ways that we can define this new space is through naming it. The council has an established naming policy. This was adopted through Resolution 10151. That's summarized here. The policy sets up 4 categories or buckets into which different types of names will be considered. In 2022, the council also added that 5th bullet, which encourages adding an equity lens to the naming process of future parks. That was added in. So to go through the naming process, we propose to begin that process now, following steps similar to how we've proceeded in the past. That includes starting with community engagement, welcoming name suggestions from the community. We collect those. Names are then screened against the council policy categories. And the job of narrowing the field and coming up with a recommendation for a name will be undertaken by the Parks and Community Services Board. Following that, the board recommendation will be transmitted to the City Council for consideration and eventual adoption. So with that, we'll return to our direction slide and give the floor back over to you, Deputy Mayor, for any discussion and direction.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parker and Mrs. Ulep. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's amazing. I appreciate the Sound Transit giving us that valuable community space. Councilmember Hamilton, we start with you, and then we go to Mayor, and then we go to Councilmember Zahn.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Good to see you tonight. Also, just thank you in general for the effort that you put into ensuring that our city is beautiful and livable. I'm definitely in favor of asking our amazing Parks Board to initiate the naming process for the new park on Main Street. We've recently, as you mentioned, updated the naming policy for parks, and it provides guidance that I know the board will make good use of. Certainly commend the board for how well it conducted the last naming process for Bridle Trails Valley Creek Park. You showed a couple of the bullets, but I think primarily for them, they arrived at the recommendation that combined a neighborhood or geographical identification with a natural or geographic feature. I think, and you mentioned as well the other criteria in addition to those, I think will really provide a guide for their final recommendation. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, that the board, as it always does, will welcome community input as it goes through the process. I know it was a key element in the naming of the Bridle Trails Valley Creek Park and was instrumental in guiding the board to its final recommendation. And I know that the board in general will keep the community firmly centered in this process as well. So interested in hearing from my colleagues, but certainly as of now, we're ready to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I too am interested in moving this forward. I love the idea of honoring our Japanese American heritage. You know, Bellevue has a sister city in Yao, Japan. And a lot of people don't realize there's a very small segment in the downtown park that commemorates our Japanese American history and has, I think, 6 beautiful flowering cherry trees. So I know this isn't about naming, but I would love Cameron to know, can we put some, you know, like Kyoto style cherry trees in that park and maybe get some weeping cherry trees?
That could certainly be something that we consider. Over time, the park is currently landscaped, but as part of this process and working with the community, we can evaluate some of those modifications over time, certainly.
It's a big draw in the spring for photos. So anyway, that would be my hope, that I do definitely support moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. I also support moving this forward with a naming as well as the commemoration of the Japanese farmers. I guess my question though, and I also like the idea of, right, is there some monuments or plantings that then also reflect the Japanese community? I guess my question is this. I know that as part of the East Rail with King County, that they convened a group that really worked on how best to do the commemoration. So when we think about this park naming, I remember in the past when we named parks, there was a difference between a neighborhood park versus a community park or a city park. So could you talk a little bit about who would be part of this outreach for the naming? Because I'm familiar with in Newport Hills, right? That was a neighborhood park. And so the naming was really from the neighborhood. And ultimately, they even did balloting in the neighborhood. So what would this park be considered?
Sure, thank you. The naming process we would follow is consistent with other naming processes in that name suggestions and community involvement is really welcome from the entire community. There is and will be in this case as well specific outreach to the surrounding neighborhoods, recognizing that they will be the folks most often using these parks. This park, so we'll continue to follow that and have sort of an open process using the Parks Board and eventually the council to sort of narrow down the options that we receive. So in that sense, the naming process itself will run somewhat independently from the concept of some future commemorative installation that may be at the park.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zahn. Councilmember Neuenhaus.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan and Cameron, for the presentation. I'm ready to move this forward as well. No questions from me, but really appreciate you just laying out the process going forward. And I think the naming process with our Parks Board is in good hands.
Amazing.
So thank you.
Parks Board,
yes.
according to Mr. Hamilton.
I stand corrected.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes, I think I'm really appreciate this going to the amazing Parks Board. I've had some contact with them some along the way. No, I think this is really, really exciting, and you've done such a good job in a relatively short time period in terms of actually getting going, because these things take a long time sometimes. But and I appreciate very much and will echo the comments made by my colleague, Councilmember Hamilton, having worked on the Parks Board too. This is really good. It's such an exciting thing to have happening, and appreciate it very much, and look forward to working with you going, and as soon as you get it ready, I'm sure we're ready to go. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Stokes. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I think it's definitely appropriate to commemorate and recognize something that we can identify Bellevue with. We value tradition, we value history, we value our roots, and we value our future. I think, but future is based on the past. So I think it's definitely appropriate. And the council already established some policies, right? I mean, we don't have to go over that. Parks Board is that designated, and Parks Board will have certain considerations, criterias. I agree that we need to recognize, commemorate. I believe that our diverse culture. The Japanese American has been here for a long time, and they were the first to, occupy the Bellevue, the farming community, and they were here for a long time. And unfortunately, they were reallocated, driven out of their homes, and so when they came back, they've lost their where they used to live. So I think this is a history which we need to commemorate, need to recognize. And we don't have too many of them, really, Bellevue. The one thing, though, I would feel that being a history, and we need to, and I think Cameron said that, it is something we need to recognize the whole entire community. And we need to be open process. We need to be all-inclusive. I think we need to have some recommendation by the council. I think that's appropriate. We need to, however, have recommendation by all of Bellevue for whatever reason. We don't want to be making this just one sector and not the others. So, because it is important, it's very important. It recognizes our history and heritage. It's going to be more in the future, but at this point, I think it's good. I recall that we started our sister city relationship. It really began with Yao, which is some Japanese, relatives or associates or family members that used to be in Bellevue, and they made connection. As a result, they established a relationship, and I think. But those folks have been here for a long time, and they built a relationship. They connected, but over the last 30 years, people who were here and they kind of have drifted away, and the younger generation have also drifted away. So I think we've lost some of the connection, and I think it's important we bring them back. It's important we preserve them. It's important to recognize them. So I think this is appropriate. But I just want to make sure that it's open to all the people who have history, who have had some background with Bellevue, with the family over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. One example is that our Bellevue school superintendent the Karamakis. They've been here for 5 generations. And many people don't recognize that fact. There are many other Japanese Americans. They may not be here anymore, but they're around us. They're somewhere else because the world is becoming so big and they may be scattered somewhere. But I think they need to remember where they originally come from. This is what history is about. This is what heritage is about. So I would like to encourage, open up the process to be as inclusive as possible, but focusing on Japanese Americans who were here many, many, many generations before we are here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Lee. Can I please get a motion?
I move to direct the Parks Department to go to Parks Board to initiate a naming process consistent with the council's policy for naming park and recreation facilities with an official be as inclusive, as broad as possible.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say yes.
Aye.
It was mainly the paraphrasing of what is in our monitor. Councilmember Lee, do you want to make another motion reading maybe from this?
If you wish, I would like to do that. But it's just how do we do it?
Mayor, bring it up. Do you have this?
Yeah,
Okay,
just go ahead.
please, on the third page, in the middle.
I'm reading the direction.
Yeah, that's.
So I just read it, but I added my statement toward the end,
Yeah.
that we need to make it as inclusive. It should be inclusive anyway. Everything we do, it should be inclusive, should be as wide as
Right.
possible.
That's
If we don't do that in that spirit, I have a lot of reservations on this.
Completely
whole-
agree. Let's
yeah.
just go with
agree.
this
On what we
motion if you
do
don't
as a
mind.
city.
That-
Yeah.
Great. Let's just go with this motion if you don't mind.
You want me to add that?
No,
If-
just read that.
motion as you read it.
Different motion. We're
Okay,
voting on a different motion.
I move. Let me just make sure that
Right here.
I got everything correct. I move to direct staff to initiate a naming process for the park at the corner of Main Street and 112th Avenue Southeast, and seek a name recommendation from the Parks and Community Services Board for council consideration.
Second.
So we change the motion, we will learn how we should do about the previous one, but we have this motion right now on the table. Any discussion on the second motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have not heard any opposed, so we are good to go. Charmaine, should we do anything about the first motion that was made?
Thank you for asking. I consider the second motion a substitute motion, so the first is now dead.
Perfect. I love all of those terminology. We can move to our, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you both. We can move to our second study session. Deputy City Manager Atkins, would you please introduce the second study session?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I am pleased to have Bianca Siegel and Nico Quijano from the City Manager's Office here tonight to provide you with an update on the city's pilot safe parking program. Since its launch in the spring of last year, the program has helped more than 30 households who had been experiencing homelessness move into stable housing, and the program is also helping many more toward housing stability. Staff is here tonight to share more on the program, the outcomes thus far, and next steps, including consideration to extend the existing contract for services. With that, I'll hand it off to Bianca Siegel, our Director of the Office of Housing, and Nico Quijano, our Outreach Program Manager. Thank you.
Thanks, Genesee, and thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm Nico Quijano, the Homelessness Outreach Program Manager in the Office of Housing with the City Manager's Office, and I'm here with my supervisor, Bianca. We are here to provide you an update on the Safe Parking Pilot Program. On this first slide, you'll see a picture of the banner that hangs in the day center of the Safe Parking Program. It says, "You are welcome here." That's a phrase that we chose very intentionally because people who are experiencing homelessness and live in their vehicle often feel unwelcome. They can feel unwelcome in the schools that they go to, in the jobs that they hold, in the community at large. And so we wanted to make sure that people who come into this facility know that they are welcomed here. And we've had the opportunity to try and develop a program that does that. We're here today to ask for your direction on what to do with the safe parking program and to consider directing staff to return with a resolution authorizing an amendment to the professional service agreement and lease agreement with For Tomorrow to extend the safe parking program at Lincoln Center through December 31st, 2026. I'll start by talking a little bit about the background of the program, how we got to the point where it is operating right now, a little bit about how the program has done over the past 10 months, and I will conclude by talking about next steps for the safe parking program. As you're probably aware, this program has been a point of council consideration for some time, since at least 2021. Over the course of that time, we got to the point where City Council directed city staff to seek a program operator and put out a request for proposals. The agency For Tomorrow responded to that request for proposals. And over the course of late 2023, we worked on developing a safe parking pilot program that we could launch. As we moved into 2024, Council reaffirmed their dedication to addressing homelessness in an efficient and effective manner. And by May of 2024, we were ready to launch the safe parking program. We launched at a budget of roughly $450,000 a year. And as that program operated over its first several months and we approached 2025, City Council approved a city budget that included $450,000 for the safe parking program in 2025 and 2026. As we worked through the program, For Tomorrow, the agency that runs the safe parking program, provided us with a 6-month report summarizing some of their successes and the work that they've done as they've launched the program. And we agreed to extend the original contract to June of 2025. We've had a couple of measures of trying to gauge the success of the program. That includes priorities that City Council identified, including that the program does not disrupt neighboring businesses. It's at the Lincoln Center on 116th that is surrounded by a number of businesses, and it was important to us to make sure that as we were helping others, we were also being a good member of the community. We asked For Tomorrow to establish a 24/7 line so that they would be available to respond to any concerns or complaints that may come up. And we asked them to track and report to us about any concerns or complaints that arose. We sent a letter to all the businesses in the vicinity of the safe parking program, both providing them with that number, that phone number, and also explaining to them a little bit about the program. Since that program has launched, For Tomorrow has reported no complaints or concerns with regard to the safe parking program. We, of course, wanted to make sure that participants were housed and in a timely fashion. We wanted to make sure that when people landed on the safe parking site, that they were not just sort of foundering there, but that they were given a pathway towards long-term stability. I'll say more about this number in a little bit, but we've, over the past 10 months, For Tomorrow has helped more than 30 households to find housing. We wanted to make sure that as we were helping people, we were also providing them with a pathway to staying housed, to staying on a pathway that keeps them stable, not having to come back to systems if not necessary. To that end, For Tomorrow helps clients to enroll in childcare so that they could go to work during the day, helped households to increase their employment and income, and helped households to enroll their children in school. And finally, we wanted to make sure that the program was collaborating successfully with other members of the community. So For Tomorrow established a security plan that was approved by Bellevue Police Department. Over the course of the program, no emergency calls related to client conflict or program issues have arisen. And For Tomorrow has done an excellent job of bringing other members of the community into the program. I'll say more about that in a minute. For Tomorrow had to undertake a pretty remarkable amount of work to make this program what it is right now. That includes site renovations. They were careful to establish spaces that were welcoming and homey, places where people could relax and settle. They were careful to undertake an efficient use of space. This kitchen that you see before you has 4 refrigerators, a number of spaces for dry goods storage, each marked with a space for each individual participant, really trying to maximize every single inch that's available to them in this space. And they wanted to make sure to offer bright, accessible spaces. You see tables, you see chairs, you see the ability to move things around to accommodate the particular needs of individual participants. Many of you were in the facility prior to the renovations taking place, so you would understand when I say that they truly did a remarkable job of setting the space up to be welcoming to families. When I think of myself as a kid coming home from school, I think of walking through the front door, going to the refrigerator to grab a snack, flopping down on the couch to maybe watch TV, walking over to a table to do my homework. For Tomorrow has established a facility where that's possible for the families that enroll in these programs. They've also done an excellent job of involving the community. They celebrate holidays and events like Halloween. They facilitate an array of child-friendly and family-focused events and crafts. And they do an excellent job of bringing in the community and others. This last picture includes a number of city leadership as well as members of the Safe Parking Program. They've made it a priority to bring as many people in as possible. I want to come back to that big number that I talked about, 30 households that have been housed over the course of the last 10 months. That's more than 60 children that have been helped to get indoors since launch of this program. You may remember from the initial address after the program had launched back in May that I gave to you all, For Tomorrow had helped a couple of households find housing right away. And I sort of cautioned you all, hey, this is really great success, but I don't want you to enter into the assumption that the best way of measuring this is by measuring how many families find housing over the course of the first 10 months or year of this program, because I thought there was no way that they would be able to keep up the pace that they'd established early on in the program, and they proved me wrong. They've housed 30 plus households over the course of the past 6 months. Those 30 households represent over 80% of the individuals that have been exited from the program. And one of the other measures that we talked about was how long does a family enroll in the program and stay in the program? Are they just sort of there for a long time? This was an important measure because a lot of the families that we work with come to the program with a lot of barriers and a lot of difficulties that they're facing, past housing debt, emotional difficulties, fleeing from or overcoming domestic violence. And so it can be quite difficult to chart a pathway towards housing. For Tomorrow has met the goal of helping families to find housing within 90 days of enrollment. The average length of stay for families that have exited is 58 days. So we're very lucky to have them facilitating this program. If directed, Council would be directing us to come back with a contract and lease extension that would take us through the end of 2026. The program would continue at the Lincoln Center. I'll say more about that in the next slide, though. And the continued use of the Lincoln Center property would require extension of the temporary land use permit, which we are already working on. So this is still a pilot program. And so we will continue to have conversation with council over the course of the next couple of years as we figure out what to do next. It's important to identify that the Lincoln Center is an aging building. At some point, it will just not be feasible to continue using it for its current purpose. It is also, ultimately, the property that it is on, planned as part of the Grand Connection. And so we were working closely with finance and asset management to determine how we'll continue to offer safe parking in the future, exploring potential sites and figuring out what will work best. We'll return with more updates and options for how to move forward at a later date. With that in mind, I guess I would just share that the first time that I walked into the safe parking program after we had launched, I was giving a tour to some of the outreach staff that I oversee. And in the day center was also a family, including their young daughter, a little girl who is a little bit older than my 3-year-old son, a little bit younger than my 7 and 9-year-old niece. And I watched her as she ran around playing games, talking happily to the staff and to her family. I saw her smiling, and I realized that she felt comfortable, that she felt safe, and that she felt welcomed. A few weeks later, her family signed a lease, and they were given the keys to an apartment. 60 other children have had that same experience as part of the safe parking program. So it is a real privilege to see the work that For Tomorrow is doing and to help to execute this program as part of the City of Bellevue. I want to thank the council for their vision. You've served on the boards of safe parking programs, visited safe parking sites to learn as much as you can, and cheered on For Tomorrow as they've done this work. I want to thank For Tomorrow for their dedication to this mission and to the participants that they serve. And I want to thank the program participants for letting the City of Bellevue and For Tomorrow be a part of their journey towards stability. I look forward to hearing your direction with regards to how we can continue this great work.
Thank you so much, Director Sigel. Nico, thank you so much, as always, being very passionate. That was a very great presentation about safe parking program. I also appreciate the dedication of staff and also For Tomorrow in providing this essential support for family who are experiencing some housing instability. The program success in helping families is really astonishing. Let us start with Councilmember Zahn, and then after her, we go to Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I can't say thank you enough to Bianca and Nico, my fellow council members, For Tomorrow, and really the families for entrusting us with your children. It takes a village and community to transform lives, and I feel like this is what we've been able to do. So I'm going to start right off by, of course, I would support extending the program through 2026. This has been, as you said, several years in the making. And so I'm just so grateful that we've been able to make this happen. And it was more than I imagined when I brought this idea to the council about the let's start a safe parking program. And the staff recommended let's start with the families and the children, and let's have the staff pre-vet the families and then work in partnership. And although it took 3 tries to get For Tomorrow as our provider, it was worth the wait. The places you said, Nico, is amazing. And the people we've been able to help just in 6 months, the more than 30 households, more than 60 children. And I also appreciate that it wasn't just stable housing. You also talked about the fact that we're helping them find childcare, find employment, so that we are really helping create the kind of stability and pathway to sustainability and being able to thrive. So that to me is huge. When I think about what the space used to look like and what For Tomorrow was able to do, it really feels like home. So welcoming, such a caring and loving space for the families to have that respite as they get back on their feet and be able to move forward. So I did have a couple of questions. One is, when we first established the program, we said let's start with 20 cars as a pilot. So I'm wondering, do we have a wait list where we would want to consider more than 20 cars? So that's one of my questions. I really appreciate the fact that although this location is temporary, that staff is looking at what we can do in terms of the next location when Lincoln Center is no longer available. My second question is, I think the other part of this was also starting partnerships with the faith communities to see if there are other safe parking programs that wouldn't be city-led, but could be potentially city-supported. So I wonder if you could talk about both of those things. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The safe parking program does not currently have a wait list. It's not full at the moment, but it has been as recently as a couple weeks ago. There's a lot of client flow, especially as they're housing a number of households. We have had a wait list at several points, never more than a couple families at a time. We certainly would like to be able to continue to serve households that are living in their vehicles and experiencing homelessness, perhaps at greater capacity. That would take some additional work and additional support to For Tomorrow for them to be able to do so. We have begun working with For Tomorrow with regard to supporting faith communities. We're starting a partnership with Newport Presbyterian, one of the local religious organizations that facilitates a safe parking program, where we will provide case management and the array of services that other safe parking participants receive. We're building up an array of knowledge and experience in facilitating safe parking programs. There's a real opportunity to partner with other entities that are genuinely interested in helping, but need a little bit of guidance or a little more structure or support. And so we're hoping that this initial partnership with Newport Presbyterian will then lead to additional partnerships that will also allow us to continue to expand the number of people that we serve.
Oh, that's great. Actually, that's the one right next to my house. So I'm glad to hear that they were doing that outreach. And I just want to end with, I have heard from a number of other electeds in other cities that they really want to understand what they're doing because they see this as a potential model for their cities as well. So just, again, thank you. Thank you. It's, we're really transforming lives, and I'm just so grateful for my colleagues and the amazing staff and For Tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zahn. Mayor.
Yeah, what a great program. It's so exciting to see something as effective as this. And I appreciate you coming back with an update. And I do hope it can be a good example for other cities. I'm very interested in extending the lease. I'd like to talk about what it's going to take to convert this from a pilot to a permanent contract. I just have one question. And then the other thing is, I'm sure they are already using Housing Navigator, but I hope they are find housing for people. So my question is, I've been involved with human services for a really long time, and I know that this program got funding through 2026. With a contract that was going to expire in this June. And I'm really curious as to how that happened. If that's typical that we provide funding for a program that doesn't have a contract beyond what the funding is for, and was there an advantage to doing it that way?
Thanks, Mayor. Let's see, with the budget process, that funding, I think, was a recognition that the program continues to be a priority. And we wanted to, through the sort of broad consideration of budget priorities, allow the council the ability to fund that along with other priority programs. Understanding that the contract itself didn't last that long, it just gives us the opportunity to continue the program pending council approval. If the council were to decide not to continue the program, those funds wouldn't be spent in that way, and that would be a different conversation. But it was effectively meant to smooth that process. I can't speak to whether we do that for other programs, but that was the case with this one.
Okay, all right. So maybe it was an aberration, or maybe there was a good reason for doing it. I kind of want to learn from it, actually. So maybe you can get back to me on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for this. We've been working on this for a long time, and we talked about this, 4, 5, 10 years ago. And it's just amazing to see this put together, and I really appreciate the presentation. And what I liked about it is, sometimes I think we need to look at what's happening here. Your presentation was not only just that what they're doing and how it's going and everything, but it really brought the human interest into it, and your presentation specifically on how it affected you and how you worked on this was just amazing. I appreciate that very much. I think that's what we try to do. And putting it together and seeing this is just so exciting to see this actually put in place. And it was something that when we first started with it, we thought, is this really going to work? But we need to do it. And you made it, and your staff, you made it do it. I want to also appreciate the work that Councilmember Zahn did. We've talked about this a lot. I know she was the one who really worked hard to get us in pushing this together. And I really appreciate that and what she talked about on this today. So it's, and the council took this up and didn't mess around with it once we got it, see where it could go and how we could do it. And it's just so exciting to see what has come out of this. So I'm very, very much in favor of continuing this and going forward. And I do think the mayor's question is something to think about too. So appreciate very much, and let's keep doing this and do more.
Thank you, Councilmember Stokes. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this is quite an amazing result. I mean, the numbers you just presented. I want to give kudos to Councilmember Zhang that really, pushed this program to fall. I have a few questions. One is to what happens, after we lose the Lincoln Center, but we'll leave that a little bit later. I want to ask this, based on the result you mentioned, this one, let's see, one unit exited without housing. What does that mean? What do we do with them? Is this something we need to make sure that we have nobody exit without housing? What happened to this one exit without housing? Do we have a follow-up with them?
Yeah,
Do we help them? Are they just too bad or what?
Yeah, I should clarify. It was actually 7 units that exited without housing, seven separate households. Some exited to other safe parking programs. One exited to relocate to a nearby job.
Okay.
Several, unfortunately, were exited due to program noncompliance. Several of those households are still engaged with my team and are still working on housing or other solutions. And so there are an array of things that happen amongst the family, and as people are trying to work towards stability. Each story is a little bit different, but we do offer as much support to them as we can.
Yes, so that still could be counted on as a success. Yeah, wait, this doesn't mean that, well, we gave up on them or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Which is good. So you have a almost perfect record. That's amazing. So I want to ask that what happens after the Lincoln Center becomes unavailable? Are they going to be available for sure throughout December 2026? So we don't have to worry about that? Or what happens if they?
Yeah, we're exploring that right now.
Okay.
It is possible that the building would not be available for the entirety of that period. And so we're, as Nico mentioned earlier, we're actively working with our colleagues in
So what's the
FAM
alternative?
to look at alternatives. And so we would bring back any updates regarding that to the council, of course. Alternatives could include leaving parking on that site, but bringing in some temporary portable buildings to support the interior needs if the building were no longer able to be used, or potentially moving to a different location. And we are evaluating city properties for that possibility.
Yeah. Well, based on the amazing program you're working on, I'm sure I am very supportive of that. So make sure that we know how we can make sure you have a space that you can continue this.
Yeah.
Even though unfortunately you have to repurpose whatever you get, but that's still better than, you don't have anything to work with. That would be most unfortunate. So I think we need to know way ahead of time. If anything that we can do, let us know. It's very worthwhile based on what you just mentioned. The second question is, we mentioned costs. We begin with costs, parking. Right now with these 30 families, with how many you have there, how many are with the car solution that we're looking for? Do they all come from cars, or
Yes,
they just happen to be there without? Yeah. So what addresses the initial reason for doing this?
Yep. So everyone enrolled in the program was living in their vehicle at time of enrollment and exits to stable housing, an
Yeah,
apartment.
so we
or
are addressing
other housing solution.
the problem, and
Yes.
it's there, and we need to continue to do so. All right, good. Well, that's amazing. Let's see if I have another question. You're exploring with faith communities and all that stuff. I think with the success you have achieved, the result you have demonstrated, it's really worthwhile. Anything that we can do as a city, we need to explore, that possibility. I think that, to me, it makes a lot of sense. I hope my colleague agrees with me. This is good. We do a lot of things without knowing what result we're gonna get, This is almost a guaranteed success. Why don't we do it? The need is there, right? Thank you.
Thank you,
Well
Councilman.
done, good job.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Newhouse.
Thank you, and thank you, Nico Bianco, for the presentation tonight. Great results. I won't belabor the excellent comments by my colleagues, but this is really great stuff, and I really want to thank For Tomorrow. I wish they were here, or at least one or two representatives were here. We could thank them personally for doing such a great job. And I paused a little bit. They had never done this before, correct? This is their first time operating a safe parking site, and wow, they really knocked it out of the ballpark. So they've just done an incredible job, and really thanks to staff, I think, setting this up in a way, hopefully, you can tell me if I'm wrong, in a way that they had really clear direction about what this was and what it wasn't, what was allowed and what wasn't, the intake process, or the way they applied to get entry into the safe parking, and then the wraparound services, and then what to do if they weren't complying to either behavioral or other type of issues, which sound like we may have had a couple, but not very many. So that really kind of set up, from my perspective, their success in operating this. So a lot of kudos to the both of you to make this happen, as well as, and I'm glad you started with that, really making them feel welcome, making them feel at home as soon as they stepped into that facility, that this was a safe place for them to get the child care that they need, or to help them get that next job, or fix a window. I heard that a broken window in one case, which especially during the winter, that's an issue you want to get addressed sooner than later, especially if you're sleeping in your car too. That can be very uncomfortable. So this is, as been mentioned before, is making a real impact in our community. And want to thank Councilmember Zahn for pushing so hard on this, but also very just proud of all my colleagues for supporting this as well and keep moving this forward. And I'm very much in favor of moving this forward as well as we continue to, make this program even better. That was actually part of some of my questions, like what are some of the things that that we learned from this that perhaps wasn't in your presentation, that maybe we had some preconceived notions going into it, but they didn't materialize, or did For Culture change their approach at all going into this? And Councilmember Lee mentioned, I'm curious too, if we do any kind of exit interviews, not only of the successful cases into housing, but if they're not successful, are we also extracting why they weren't successful? And I had one other question. Well, actually, I'll stop there for now and let you answer those. Thank you.
Yeah. I had mentioned in our previous presentation that one of the things that they learned very early on was the array of emotional scarring that families were bringing into the program.
Yeah.
We were ready for some of the sort of logistical challenges of finding employment and being able to pay for an apartment and overcoming past due rent or past evictions, that sort of thing. But just the hurt that families were bringing with them and the need to sort of parse through that. I've talked to a number of families at this point now who just talked about the embarrassment of not being able to provide housing to their children and how much that set them back in terms of seeking out stability. So there was a lot of recalibrating to provide the sort of emotional space for
Yeah.
a family to be able to kind of find level ground and then
Yeah.
start working forward. We're also finding that families are very, very eager to get housed, sometimes to the detriment of their long-term stability. They'll want to jump into a lease just to get their child inside as quickly as possible, and that lease may not be sustainable long-term. And so surprisingly, on occasion, we're saying, let's slow down, let's make sure that you have the income, let's make sure that you have all the things in place that you'll need to be able to move into an apartment, so that we're setting them up to not be in this circumstance again 6 months from now or a year from now.
Yeah, yeah. And that's such an important point to make, that they are so driven to get into stable housing. And as at least some of the data that I saw from other safe parking programs around the country, it's why it's such a critical need. Plus, it's a program before they actually fall into complete homelessness or experiencing homelessness, that they are ready and willing and want to be in that more permanent and supportive housing somewhere. So to have everything set up to help them achieve it, even if it is slow down for a second, let's check these other few boxes. But that motivation is there, and I think that's part of the reason why this is such a successful program. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Great work again. Look forward to another update in the future, and please invite For Tomorrow to come as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Neuenhaus. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I love this program, and I am beyond impressed with how successful it's been. While it's heartbreaking to see so many families living out of their vehicles, it's encouraging to see them receive the services that help them make the positive changes they need and want. I appreciate that our service partner For Tomorrow takes every aspect of the program so seriously, and that it starts at the very beginning with families, ensuring that participants are willing to establish a set of goals that will help them attain indoor housing right up front, focuses everyone on the primary goal of finding permanent housing. Once the goals are clear, then the one-on-one support that participants receive can make the intended impact. Some of this is a little bit repetitive, but I just think these figures are just so amazing. 53 families, 69 kids, 106 adults have been served. 30 families have obtained stable housing. I just think that is amazing. Really well done. And then again, throughout the history of the program, 0 complaints or emergency response calls. I would have guessed that the number would have been higher than 0. Seems clear to me too, and I think Councilmember Neuenhaus was keying in on this, that the participants that just need some help to get on track. We have a great team there to support them, and the community supports the effort as well. I think, again, the For Tomorrow folks have done an amazing job, very impactful work. I think, to your credit, the staff has set the city up for success from the very beginning. And you've all done amazing work supporting the mission of safe parking. Thrilled for the families that have gotten the support they need to live a more stable life, and in most cases have moved into stable housing. I think some of the other supports that they've gotten, we may not be around to see how that pays off, but I think we can say for sure that in all the ways they've been supported, it's going to pay off at some point. We've already budgeted the $450,000 that's needed to maintain the program through the end of the year, and just considering how wildly successful the program has been, it's a very easy yes for me to want to extend program funding through the end of 26. And as been mentioned, I also appreciate the staff looking ahead to finding a new home for the safe parking program once the current site is no longer available. We have a good thing going, and we need to keep with it. I hope that you'll stay in touch with the council as you work to find a new site. The safe parking program is too important and too impactful to allow it to not be at full strength even for a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Thank you again. I have one question. There are 2 metrics that, as all of my fellow council members mentioned, amazing. The high success rate in transitioning families to stable housing, 80% is amazing, and also no complaints in the neighborhood. is there any playbook? Is there any blueprint of this success? Because the location will change at some point. The nonprofit may change. Do we know how are we achieving these amazing metrics? But that we can provide that to apply that to the next location, or provide that if we are going to expand to a faith-based location. Do we have that magic sauce or the strategy that is behind all of that, the implementation, all of those, again, playbook? Do we have that, or are we going to prep that and have that somewhere to replicate this success?
When we talked to other safe parking program operators or people who have thought at length about safe parking, one of the key pieces of advice that they offered to us was to ensure that the people who participate in safe parking feel as though they are part of a community, that they have some responsibility to the site, and that they have a connection to the programs and people who are living around them. That's one of the areas where For Tomorrow has really thrived. I alluded to them bringing in various donors and various community members to help facilitate the program or help people to feel welcome. They certainly have done that. They've also just taken the time to get to know each participant individually and help those participants get to know one another. They have site hosts who live on the site, who are participating in the program, who help to manage the site and make sure that rules are being followed, that everything is running well. So if there is a secret sauce, it's knowing the community and building community in that safe parking program. So wherever else we go, we need to be sure that that's one of the priorities, not just providing a place for people to land, not just creating a pathway towards stable housing, but making sure that we facilitate that communal space so that everyone can take ownership of the program.
Thank you. Document all of this, because if we are passing that to the next nonprofit, I think it's good for them to review exactly how For Tomorrow was successful in the both metrics. Thank you so much. I appreciate you both being here this late. That's, I believe, it's the end. Oh, we need to make a motion. Great.
I move to direct staff to return with a resolution authorizing an amendment to the professional service agreement and lease agreement with For Tomorrow to extend the safe parking program at Lincoln Center or at another location through December 31st, 2026.
Second.
We have,
Let's go with Janice.
we go with Councilmember Zahn second. Any discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes. Aye.
Aye.
I've heard everyone's aye. There is no opposed. Thank you so much. And now we can adjourn. Councilmember Zahn and Mayor, thank you for joining us via Zoom.
We're zoomed.
Thank you.